Hi guys! In part 1, we made this setup to a certain point, and from there, we're continuing in part 2. So if you missed part 1, I've added it in the description. Don't forget to check it out before watching this one, because we'll be continuing directly from where we stopped. In this part, we're going to finish the environment, set up the camera and lighting, create the materials, add textures, do some compositing, animate the camera, and finally render the scene. So let's get started. Now add a cube. Scale it down accordingly. Delete the back face. Apply the scale, and add a bevel to it. The reason we're creating this simple shape is that we don't need a complicated environment mesh. We mainly need something that gives us the right structure and allows the lighting to interact with the scene. Here, I'm reusing my old models.
You can use anything you want, 1 or 2 plants and 1 window. Actually, we don't need a proper window for this one. It's just for the light coming from there. So we just need a shape for it. But here, I'm using the old model I already have.
A common beginner mistake here is trying to model every little environmental detail. Don't. If something is only going to be seen as part of the background, build only what the camera actually needs.
Here, I'm adding a few edge loops and deleting the back face so that the light can come through. The important thing here is that we're using the window more as a lighting element than as a fully modeled architectural object. So don't spend hours modeling something that the camera barely sees. Adjust the location of these objects, and duplicate this wooden part. Scale it along the Z-axis a little bit. Now adjust those parts. And combine everything using Ctrl+J. This is a good point to check the overall proportions.
Before moving on, make sure nothing is obviously overlapping or floating. Small problems are much easier to fix now than after you've spent time on materials and lighting. Here I'm adding another plane. Rotate it in the x-axis by 40 degrees.
and select those edges and extrude them. Now select those faces and use Shift-D to duplicate them. Then press P to separate. Move it a little forward so that it doesn't penetrate the backmesh. This is a very common beginner issue when building layered environments. Two surfaces sitting directly inside each other can create ugly shading or rendering artifacts. So whenever you're duplicating a surface like this, give it a little bit of separation. Adjust the position of that edge. Scale it down, place it where you want, and now we have the basic environment ready. Now add a camera. Adjust the position accordingly. Change the resolution if you want, and play with the focal length. I started with a 1:1 resolution, but later I changed it to 1920 by 1080. Then adjust the focal length. The reason we're testing the focal length here is because it changes the way the scene feels. A wider focal length shows more of the environment, while a longer focal length gives us a tighter composition. So don't just move the camera around endlessly. Sometimes changing the focal length is the better solution. And delete any mesh that is penetrating. It won't look in the camera anyway. This is another useful production habit. If the camera can't see it, don't waste time detailing it. Now adjust everything. Adjust the proportions and rotate the objects. just check everything in render mode once again properly. This is important because viewport material mode and the actual rendered result can look very different. Now I'm adding all these parts into one group. And adding a sunlight. I want that sunlight to come through the window, so I'm adjusting the position. The goal here is to create a directional light source that feels like it's coming from outside the window. So here I'm deleting those window parts so that the light can come through.
You can adjust it accordingly. I want that reflection there. And I'm adding another light. This is an area light. Scale it up a little bit. And explore the power and shape settings. This is something beginners often overlook. The size of an area light changes the softness of the light. So don't only think about power. Play with both the size and intensity until the shadows look right. I'm duplicating the light and placing it on the other side. We can change the light color also. Don't be afraid to experiment here. Lighting is one of those things where small changes can make a surprisingly big difference. If everything looks flat, don't immediately increase the brightness. Try changing the direction, size, or position of the light first. Now, let's work on the materials. In the material, I'm adding a brown color to the background. You can change it accordingly. I'm just adding noise texture and mixing it with another color so that it doesn't look plain. This is a simple way to break up a completely flat background. Even subtle variation can make the surface feel much more interesting. Change the color and adjust the lighting if you want.
Now I'm adding a wooden color to it. Play with the roughness. This is where you want to think about what the material is supposed to be. Wood usually shouldn't behave like polished glass, so use the roughness to control how strong and sharp those reflections are. Now let's work on the gemstone. For the gemstone, I'm enabling transmission and setting the IOR to 1. I'm adding a light. Changing the render mode to cycles, giving it a little bit of metallic. I also added a small light there. Play with the metallic and roughness. Here, I gave it a little metallic value so that it can reflect light. The important thing with the gemstone is that lighting is going to do a lot of the visual work. Don't expect the material alone to make the gem look amazing. You need good highlights and reflections for the shape to read properly. For the trophy, I gave it some gold metallic material. Just increase the metallic. And add another material for the bottom. Just play with the metallic and roughness values. This is where you should avoid one common beginner mistake. Don't make every metallic object 100% metallic and perfectly smooth. Real materials usually have some variation, so use the roughness to control how polished or rough the surface appears.
Now I selected those middle faces. Duplicate them, separate them. Now duplicate that glass material once again. And I added an image texture to it. Now go to Edit mode, then go to UV mode. Just adjust the placement of it. Connect the color to alpha. Change the metallic and roughness to 1 so that we can see the text properly. It is looking a little stretched, so I'm adjusting it in the UV layout. Scale it properly so we can see the text clearly and it doesn't look stretched. This is exactly why UV editing is important. If your image texture looks stretched, blurry, or completely misplaced, the problem isn't always the texture itself. Sometimes your UVs simply need some attention. Now I'm adding another light from the back, adjusting the frame location. Now add another material for the frame. Here I'm using one image texture. And in Edit mode, in UV mode, just adjust the UV layout.
Now I'm scaling it up a little bit so that the image won't look squashed. Again, we're using the UV layout to control exactly how the texture sits on the geometry. Add a material to this calendar, the whole calendar. And add another material for the front part. And use another image. Then adjust it in the UV layout. You can add any objects there, so you don't have to copy this exact setup. The idea is simply to populate the scene with objects that make sense for your composition. Now check everything. And change the proportions, lighting, whatever and whenever you want. This is the refinement stage. Don't be afraid to go back and change something. That's normal. In fact, a lot of the final quality comes from these small adjustments, rather than one big modeling trick. And adjust the camera location. Adjust the camera position if you want. Adjust the colors. Keep checking the scene from the actual camera view. That way you're spending your time improving what the viewer will actually see. Here I'm rendering at 50 samples. It is just a test render. You don't need a high sample count for every preview. At this stage, we're only checking composition, lighting, materials, and whether anything looks obviously wrong. Doing quick test renders can save a lot of time.
Now go to compositing. Add a new node setup. Here I'm adding a color correction node, adjusting the saturation a little bit, and the contrast a little bit. Play with the settings until you get the required result. The important thing here is not to blindly copy my values. Every scene is different. Use these controls to get the mood you want. And I added a bloom node. Change it to fog glow and adjust the properties. You can change the fog glow to streaks or another option, but fog glow looks better here. The reason we're using this effect is to enhance bright areas and give the scene a little more atmosphere. But be careful.
Too much glow can quickly turn a nice render into something that looks like every light source is radioactive. So keep it subtle. Now I'm adding an empty object. Select the camera, then select the empty at last. Press Ctrl+P to parent. This means that when we rotate the empty, the camera will move with it. This is a very useful technique for simple camera animation. Instead of trying to animate multiple camera transformations individually, we can use the empty as a control. So I'm adding a keyframe on the empty at 0 location. Press I to add a keyframe. Then I'm going to frame 60. Rotate the Z-axis a little bit on the empty, and press I to add another keyframe. Now we have a simple camera movement. Check the animation once. Go to the graph editor.
and change it to linear. Select those keyframes. Go to interpolation mode.
Select the linear option. The reason we're doing this is to control how the camera moves between the keyframes. By default, Blender can add easing, which may not be what we want for this type of simple camera movement. With linear interpolation, the movement stays consistent. And it is looking good. Now select the location where we want to save these renders. And I want it in a PNG sequence. Change the samples and render the animation. A PNG sequence is useful because every frame is saved separately. If something goes wrong during rendering, you don't necessarily have to start the entire animation again. Here, this lighting is way too much, so I'm deleting that light. This is exactly why test renders are important. Sometimes something looks fine in the viewport, but once everything is rendered together, one light suddenly decides it wants to be the main character. So I'm deleting that light. Check everything once again.
And hit the render button if you like it. And that's it, guys, for today's video. We started from the setup we created in part 1 and continued by building the environment, setting up the camera, creating the lighting, adding materials and textures, working with UVs, adding compositing, creating a simple camera animation, and preparing the final render. If you followed along, don't forget to save your Blender file. And if you enjoyed the tutorial, please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to hit the like button. If you missed part 1, make sure to check it out from the link in the description. We'll meet in the next one. Bye!